Okay, let's try that one more time.
Here we go.
Welcome to this episode of The Marriage Creative. We are a happy family with one really big story, and we want to help you grow, strengthen, and rekindle your marriage.
All right, welcome into episode number 2 of The Marriage Creative Show. I'm Cale.
And I'm Carla.
And we've been married 23 years. This is the second episode in our podcast here. Show, if you will. I don't know if I like the term podcast anymore, but anyway, it's what we're doing. And we appreciate you coming back.
What are you talking about? You don't like the term podcast?
Well, to me, it has a negative tone about it now. People think, oh, he's a podcaster.
Oh, well, what would you call it?
It's a show. That's a podcast.
Show sounds worse than podcast to me.
Well,
it is a show sometimes.
Depends on what kind of show you're talking about. So,
A 3-ring circus,
yeah,
or
it can be a little bit of everything.
yeah.
So, seriously, thank you so much for coming back and listening. We had a great time with episode 1. Hope you enjoyed that. Got a lot of good feedback from it. And to be very frank, it was kind of not the best day to do that show. I wasn't feeling great, but we wanted to get the program out, so we did it anyway and kind of pushed through. I pushed. Carla was fine, but feeling better and happy to be here
Although
with you.
you did say you were hungry in the middle of
my
it.
stomach growled.
Well, I didn't hear that. I just heard you say
I could hear it. If you go back and listen to right before I say I'm hungry, you'll hear my stomach growl. And I didn't edit that out, by the way. I wanted to leave it in there. That's just, we're real. Like, sometimes too real.
Oh, and so, by the way, also,
Okay.
you mentioned that we were in my old bedroom.
Yeah, we are in your old bedroom.
I know, but like this is just the podcast studio. This is not, we don't live here. So,
Well, that's a good point. So,
so somebody was like, so y'all are living with, I'm like, no.
no, so,
Well, you're podcasting from your old bedroom. I'm like, no, we are podcasting from my old bedroom, but it's just for podcast studio. It's not.
so Carla's dad passed back in November, and as we've been straightening up and moving things around, helping kind of like sort, if you will, Carla's old bedroom made kind of a perfect room. It's small enough to put the gear in and not take up too much room, but at the same time, it doesn't have a real bouncy feel in the audio. And it's not at our house where we actually live with our 5 kids and 2 dogs, so, or 7 kids, if you want to say. So, yeah, it's just more quiet up here. So it makes a nice feel.
Yeah.
It's
just kind of weird being in the old bedroom.
It is very weird because I don't see the Radio Shack phone that used to light up when it would ring over there in the corner. The New Kids on the Block poster is missing.
It was not New Kids on the Block. It was Kirk Cameron, I think was the lady. I don't know who it was.
I don't know, but she was a big NKTOB fan.
That was a long time ago.
I had hair a long time ago.
Well, true.
Yeah, I'm a good salesman, James Hirschberger says. I got you, so. Okay, so we're not here to talk about all of that, but so no, whoever asked that question, we don't live with her mom. We have our own home. It's just full of kids, and it's more quiet up here. So this is the studio for now, although we got traffic noise. So anyway, we're 23 years now. We beat the 23rd year just about 3 weeks ago. Right before we recorded it right before.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Episode 1, and then.
Well, then that would, yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't been back since our anniversary, and we're here now. We just came back in off the road.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, you guys tour? Not really. Not yet. But so our family, we kind of talked a little bit about it the last time with you when Carla had gone through a cancer diagnosis. And, of course, she's here. Thank the good Lord. But during that time, our church every week would show, they don't do it just for us, but every week they show a video of something encouraging, of someone who's overcome or whose business has done something great, or there's a miracle, in air quotes, have happened. And during that time that Carla was sick, we were encouraged by a good 2 handfuls of stories that we had seen during that time. So we have decided to begin going out and meeting these folks face to face and getting their story told along with how it encouraged our story. And we're calling it One Really Big Story.
Well, and some of them may not have been a part of that. Some of them are just stories that we've come across along the way.
Initially, we've gone out. So we just got back from Nashville, Tennessee, and spent some time with two fantastic couples. And those videos will be available soon. Of course, we'll let you know when. But we just got back home and have hours of editing to do. So that's on our son Eli. No pressure, but if you're listening.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. We drove up and drove back and had a great home. We did a VRBO and just had a fantastic time with family. So we're really excited about that. It's not the Marriage Creative, although it is a part of the Marriage Creative. It is, I guess, under the umbrella of the Marriage Creative. So it's a project we're doing with our entire family, all 5 kids, and both of us are hitting the road from time to time. We're going to New York State before too long, so that should be interesting as well.
Yeah, especially with that long drive.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about last time about us having kind of gone through all the marriage vows and still trying to, walk through those properly, if you will. We talked a little bit about for better or for worse, sicker for poor, richer for poor, sicker for whatever. I've already forgotten them. It was 23 years ago.
Whatever the marriage
and that
vows
chair
were.
is going to wear me out.
Sorry.
That's okay. We probably need to talk a little bit more about 2019, 2020, just to kind of give folks an understanding of where we've been, and because there's encouragement in there. Because where we've been is where people may not have gone, or they may wind up there one day. And I think that that the story has a lot of value in it. We knew it would because it cost us something. So now the devil has to pay.
Right.
So April 25th, 2019, we took you into the hospital. I'd been trying to get her to go for about a week. She had been not well for, 2 years or more. And she got to the point where, I could see it all over her.
Well, when I couldn't tolerate food, that's when things really went downhill quickly.
Yeah. So we were able to get her in the hospital, and they determined that she had some sort of mass in her uterus that was about the size of a cantaloupe. And about a month later, a little bit less than a month later, I guess, they told us that it was...
It was 2 weeks later.
2 weeks? It felt like 2 months.
Yeah. I went in on April 25th, and on May the 8th, I got the diagnosis.
Okay. So it was a cancer diagnosis, which is a story unto itself when you think about the times that it regenerated and all that craziness, the countings and whatever. But it wasn't a good diagnosis,
right,
at all.
Well, I was told I had a high grade uterine cancer.
Yeah,
which was a very fast growing aggressive.
Yeah, they
type.
use that term. And we heard them say it. We didn't disagree that there wasn't something wrong with your body.
Yeah, we definitely knew something was
very
wrong.
evident. But at the same time, we decided that was not going to be our truth.
Right.
And
it
this
was just
is
a fact.
Yeah. This is where, some of this stuff can offend people. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. If you find where we're going with this offensive, that's okay for you. We're just going to tell you where we've been, what we've done, and how our beliefs helped us get to where we are today.
Right.
That's your preface. So they told Carla about 4 months. The doctors came in.
Well,
sat down
this was fast forward to July. This was July 1st. And it was 3 doctors that were, checking on me and seeing how things were, and said that if I chose not to do treatment, that it looked like I would maybe have about 4 months.
And they wanted to put you in hospice care.
Yeah.
And you had 5 kids, and you were what, 41 years old?
Wait, or 40? Yeah, 41.
Okay. Young.
Yeah.
To have 4 months in hospice care. So we just decided that wasn't what we were going to do. And I say we because we're firmly believers that we are one flesh, that we are, I'm her, she's me, biblically, spiritually, maybe not physically, maybe not mentally or emotionally, but spiritually we are the same person, and we kind of live by that standard. So we were given that diagnosis, and the very next morning, Carla had a port put into her I guess you call that your chest area. And in just a matter of days, she began chemotherapy and then into radiation. We can leave a lot of the details out of that just because everybody knows what that looks like. No hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, Kojak.
But I will say one thing about eyelashes, just because.
Okay, that was my chair, by the way.
I was going to say,
it's on me. It was me.
That's
I moved the wrong direction.
Just because I love that detail of thinking about how creative God is and just, little things like that really matter, like eyelashes and just things that until you're in those situations, you don't know they matter.
Right.
So I'm just saying,
So why do eyelashes matter?
Well, for one, they definitely block the wind out of your eyes and the sun. I was in a wheelchair, I guess, for, I don't know, several months. And, riding in a wheelchair, the wind feels intense when even though you weren't going fast, it feels like you're going fast because of the intensity of the wind if you don't have eyelashes and eyebrows to kind of deflect that. So it's just one of those things that maybe people do know what they've watched someone go through, but if you've never been in that situation, that's just a little thing that feels like a very big thing in that moment if you're the one without it.
Right.
So just saying, you may have seen somebody go through it, but if you haven't been the one in that situation, even those little tiny details are huge.
And that's not saying like, if you haven't gone through cancer, you haven't lived, or
no, I'm just saying,
if you haven't spoken in tongues, you're not a Christian. It's nothing like that. You're just
it's just
stating how evident it was.
Yeah, it's just even little things that nobody else that hasn't been in those shoes would even give a thought to.
Well, I never would think about it. I mean, I can say this, having lost most of the hair on the top of my head over the last 15 years or so or more. When I go outside now, I can tell a real big difference, especially when the sun's shining.
Yeah.
Or when it's raining. Like it used to be, I had a carpet up there, and you couldn't even, rain couldn't get through it. It was so thick.
Right.
And now it's like I could take some shampoo and scrub my scalp out there, kind of a thing.
Well, that's what I mean. It's just if you've never experienced it, there are things about it that even...
Well, it's like you would never, imagine it until you've been there. Right. I guess is what you're trying to say. I get you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we did all that, and it sucked. And then we've got a lot of stories in that. We don't have to go there right now, but what we want to, I guess, share with you in this time is that, yeah, it was probably the hardest thing we've ever done. I know it was the hardest thing physically Carla's ever done, and I would bet probably the hardest thing spiritually she's ever gone through. But we decided that we were going to take God's word just as it says. I mean, how it's written, no matter what version you want to read it in, if you're a 1611 guy or you're a Message gal, it doesn't matter to us. But what it says in 1 Peter 2:24 is that by his stripes we are healed. And that's a past tense.
Have been.
Yeah, it's over. It's done. It is finished. And we took God at his word. And we just believed. And, of course, now we did some medicinal things. I mean, she had treatments and all this and that. Some of the stories that go along through those treatments will blow your mind, especially if you're familiar at all with them, how God worked miraculously even in those situations, which the doctors still to this day will comment on. So I'm sure we'll find some rabbit trails in the course of this program to go down some of those stories that we experienced during that time. But the primary thing, I guess, you just have to say first is that God's word is the truth, and God's word works. Mm-hmm. It really does. Now, I mean, you have to apply it to yourself. You have to bring it into your heart and agree with it and make it a part of your vocabulary. But it works. And Carla is living absolute proof of that. And I just thank the Lord that he sent his word, made it flesh, and then he came about and walked around doing good and healing them all. Mm-hmm. And we're in all. So I'm so grateful for that. It was no fun.
No. Well, it wasn't fun.
It was not fun.
It was still a beautiful process.
It was a process. Mm-hmm. And there was beauty in it. sometimes for me. And I wasn't the one, I'm just going to be a whiny guy about it, I guess. I mean, God's good. That's all I can say is he's just good. So we thank him for his goodness. And if you're listening to this and you're like, what in the world are they talking about? We're talking about Jesus, the only way to the Father, Jesus. And if you don't know him and you would like to, or maybe you've got some questions, we would be happy to chat with you. Guys can connect with me and gals can connect with Carla. But he's real. He's alive. He saved us. He saved Carla's physical body we've seen. He's working in all of us, and he's got a great plan for you. That's not the Billy Graham either. That's the Kel version. So, but, on a little lighter topic. No, you wanted to say something, I could tell. What were you getting ready to say?
That's the Kel version, and I was just going to say, or the Caleb.
Oh, wow. Version. Are we going to have that conversation here?
We might.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I don't want to mention that today my devotion was talking about Abram having his name changed to Abraham.
Oh, no way. You didn't tell me that.
Well, I just read it late in the day before we came over.
Oh.
Day number 12. Thanks, Pastor Amy. Yeah, so I was born Caleb David Nelson, December 18, 1973. Seems so long ago. And my dad was a huge NASCAR fan, and his favorite race car driver was William Caleb Yarborough. And that guy went by the nickname Cale, which is Caleb without the B. So my dad, being the super redneck race car fan, named me after one of the best race car drivers in history. And I've been Cale my whole life. My name is Caleb. My birth name is Caleb. I have to sign documents with the birth name Caleb. But, man, I've been Cale for 48 and a half years. It's just who I've been. It's like my name. And I got these really cool one-liners like, kind of like the vegetable, but not nearly as green or bitter, But your given name. My given name is Caleb.
Yeah.
So I've always liked my name. I've just never used it. And throughout my life, it's kind of been, why are you going to change your name now? You're 18 or you're 21 or you're 20. Now you're married and 25. I've just always been Cale. But that's not maybe going to stay that way. And I'm kind of struggling. Because
you're hanging on by everything with that.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to get used to. Okay, let me just be honest. I've always really liked myself a whole lot. And I don't really have much reason to anymore. But if you know what I mean, aesthetically. Not that it was a whole lot back then, but it was better than it is now. But as I look at this, I've just always been Cale. So I feel like personally.
You identify as.
I identify as Cale. The artist formerly known as Cale.
That's it.
Yeah.
You're going to be formerly known as.
Well, I was a big Prince fan back in the day.
See, he did it.
Yeah, but he was like a multimillionaire that wore purple and played white custom Stratocaster guitars. So what do you do with that? Here's my thing. My hang up here is I'm afraid that if I change my name to my name, that people will look at me like, well, who does he think he is? He needs to change his name, or is he so fancy pants he needs a name change? And I'm still just the same guy. I'm just struggling.
I like fancy pants. That's pretty good.
So, help me understand why this is like marriage counseling on the podcast, y'all. We're just having a real conversation. We haven't gone down this road. So
well, you didn't tell me the whole thing about your devotional today.
That's let me just add this. For the last month, it seems everywhere we go, or even back into December, everywhere we've gone, like if we hear teaching, it's about Caleb and Joshua. If we hear devotion or a podcast, it's Caleb. If a pastor's teaching, he's teaching on Caleb. Everywhere we go, or Abram and Abraham, we hear that a lot. But it's like I'm constantly being bombarded with this name change, this Caleb character in the Bible.
Well, actually, it started because I just spoke that to you one day.
That was my chair.
And I said, I just have this kind of feeling that it's time for you to change your name to Caleb, your given name.
I mean, you're only 48. Why not?
Well, I don't know why I was thinking it. It just sort of came to me that your true identity is more properly depicted in that name versus Cale.
But Cale's a derivative of Caleb, so it means the same thing.
Cale, so it's not like I can say anything. It would be hard for me to call you Caleb.
So now it's hard for her. She's been around 25 years. But for you, with 48 years of being referred to this, it's going to be easy. Caleb.
I didn't
Caleb.
say it would be easy. I just said I feel like God's rebranded you. And
He didn't rebrand me physically.
Well,
am I going to get hair?
He rebranded you. And I just feel like it's more accurate a more accurate description. Or
So here's the thing that the listener doesn't know. The name Caleb is Hebrew. It's made up of two words, Kal-lev. Kal and Lev is the two Hebrew words that I probably just said wrong. And it means dog. D-O-G. So if I'm Cal, I'm a dog. If I'm Caleb, I'm a dog. But, that's not real exciting or awe-inspiring or, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of missing a few things.
Well.
But if you look deeper into the name meaning, and I did earlier, and I don't have it in front of me now, I apologize.
You didn't tell me that either, so you were actually researching it today.
I actually put into Google Cale versus Caleb name meaning. It came back the same thing. But it means in some, it can be understood to mean intensely loyal, extremely faithful. So, I mean, Cale's the same guy. So I'm just kind of struggling with changing my name.
But Caleb, if you think about the biblical character, he wasn't Cale, he was Caleb.
Yeah.
He, his strength didn't diminish in old age. And
well, I could use some of that for sure.
Well, see, I'm trying to help you here. He took the mountain at 85 years old.
Right.
And I can't remember what scripture it is that talks about your latter days being greater than your former. But I think that's why I sense that like name change over you. It's more of a like to help you identify or relate to your true identity, I guess.
So I want to pause you there just a second, and I want to speak to women right now, because sometimes women won't hear me, whereas men won't hear you. We'll kind of take sides. Ladies, it would do your husband a lot of good if you knew him well enough to have just said those things to him in regard to who he is. Meaning that 23 years we've been married, 7 years we've been together, but you know me well enough that you can speak that to me and not be like making it up. Right. Like, you've got a work to do. This name associates with your work to do. It's not just like something flippant. Somebody says, well, your other name sounds better, or it's more marketable.
Actually, I like both of your names equally well. It's not like I like Caleb better than Cale, and I call you Cale. And I don't even know if I could change to calling you Caleb.
But what I'm trying to bring up right here is for women that are listening, and men, you the same way, to know your spouse, get to know your spouse well enough so that you can speak things like this to them in truth and love, not because they're named after Uncle Mickey, who was an alcoholic and shot his grandma or something. I mean, but you have to know the person well enough to be able to express what you're trying to express to me in a way that is unoffensive, number one. But secondly, it's inspiring to know that you know me well enough to be able to say those things to me in truth and love and see that good in me. Because it's just like she told me the other day. She said, you're holding on to your old identity, which back in the day you were like the cool guy, and you had this name that nobody else had except a cousin, Kel Smith, which was really funny back in school. So just spouses, listen to that, because we don't have it all figured out, but that there's power there, because you're able to to call something out of me.
Right.
That I might not even want to see.
Which is why throughout all of biblical time, people had a name change. That's what I'm getting at. Is, every time someone had a name change, it was because their true identity, it was ready for that to blossom or bloom or for them to step into it.
Right.
And that's why they would have a name change, because it literally signified the old has gone. You're a new creation, but not only are you a new creation, you literally are stepping into your identity of who God made you from the beginning, but maybe you've
taken a while to get there,
or done things your own way.
Right.
And so that's why I say I just sense over you, like God shifting something and changing your name to Caleb just signifies, it's kind of like baptism. People go and get baptized, not because baptism saves you. Only the blood of Jesus can save you. But it's an outward sign of what has happened, the transformation that has happened. Okay, well, it's the same thing with a name change. Why did I take on your last name? Because literally I identify as your wife, not just my own self anymore. So, like, name changes are significant for that reason, because it signifies there's been a transformation, something significant happened here, and it's marking that. And so it's not like I'm saying you're a totally different person, but literally you are stepping into a new role that I feel like God has ordained from you from the beginning of time. And he named you, your parents, but God inspired them to name you what they named you. And it's with purpose and reason. You've been called, not just called that name, but you've been called to be who you are and to take the mountain. There are things that God has for you to do. And I feel like it literally is that significant, that it's not just a shift in your day-to-day, but it's such a big shift that you're stepping into your calling, that you have to be called something different, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And if that wasn't heavy for anybody else, it was heavy for me. And I respect that. And we're going to have to keep having this conversation. No, I feel you. It's not that I don't necessarily not agree with what you're saying. I'm just trying to get my head all the way around it, because it's, I go from being one guy to basically a different guy, and that's
how old was Saul when he became Paul?
I don't know.
Or Abram when he became Abraham.
Yeah, they
were older probably than you, changing. But their identity changed.
Right.
They stepped into their calling, and or Jacob became Israel, or Simon became Peter. I don't know what their ages were, but I'm sure it was difficult to have been one thing all your life. A name is important.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're so at least yours is not a big.
I don't have to change my driver's license.
Jump. Oh, it already says Caleb.
It does. Wow. Mr. Nelson, that stays the same?
Yeah, think about me. I had to change everything.
Oh, it took like 20 minutes. Come on, Carla.
No.
I was there sitting in the parking lot at the DMV. It didn't take that long.
It wasn't just the DMV.
I know. It's Social Security office. I know.
Had to go down there.
I found their marriage license today.
You did?
Yeah. Random fact of the moment. Yeah, I found it.
All kinds of things that happened today you didn't tell me about.
That's what happens when you were out work making a living and I'm staying home with the kids,
I feel like we're back to episode 1. I come home and...
Nothing but transparency here, folks. Get your money's worth, full of transparency.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so, I'm just thinking through it. It's just kind of, to me it seems really big. It's probably not, but it just feels kind of big.
Well, how about Sunday when we're in the Smoky Mountain? What was it? Smoky
Mountain Knife Works. Oh my gosh, y'all! This is incredible. I wish that we had this on film, because this would. It freaked me out. It would freak you out after this conversation we just had. So we're in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We're halfway home between Nashville and Spartanburg, South Carolina, where we live.
So we took a stop for the
We made a stop to get
boys.
the legs to stretch and the boys to go to the Southeast largest knife store. It's like Macy's, but it's knives.
Oh no, it was like painful with me and the girls. We were just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But
we made a 30-minute stop.
y'all thought it was fun.
So we got a 30-minute stop at the knife store, and
It was worth it, though. I'd say, as much as I hated the knife store, it was worth it for the moment when
that we're getting ready to describe.
Yeah.
Okay. So our 30 minutes had winged down to nothing, and we're headed to the checkout. Everybody knows time's up. Everybody's made their selections, and we have to go check out now. Things are different in the store than they used to be. You have to check out at the checkout. We used to be able to check out at the little counters.
Yeah.
So we're all headed to the same checkout counter together, and I'm ahead of everybody. I don't know what they're doing, but they're way behind. So I stop.
Wait on us to catch up.
And we're in the deep south here, right? At least to me, Gatlinburg is the deep south. I mean, it's the redneck Riviera. That's what they call it. So we're in the midst of it. And I stop just kind of in the center of the main floor. And this lady who I'd already seen trying to drag her kids away from something a few moments before had caught up with me. And one of her kids had kind of run off and was going the wrong way. And she wasn't the smallest lady in the building. And her lungs were very well developed. But she literally walks up, like in my personal space, like I'm not even standing there, and turns and faces me and screams, "Caleb, come over here, Caleb!" Like the whole store's staring at her, and she's screaming my given name
At you.
at me. And I wanted to say, "What?" But I didn't. But I looked down the way, hoping that nobody else heard what was just screamed in my face. And I saw the look because she had heard it and she knew. And I knew what she knew.
I was like, well, you can't escape it.
So yeah, I had this real big loud lady scream my birth name in my face in the middle of the...
Well, and it would only have been funny if we had not just had the conversation.
Coming down the mountain.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it had just randomly happened on any given day, it might not have been funny, but we had just had that conversation.
I mean, how many times can you read stuff into things? You know, is there a limit? Is it like a 70 times 7 thing? I don't know.
Well, we're approaching 70 if you're...
Yeah, if you're
paying
counting.
attention.
So anyway, sorry we talked about my name this whole time, but maybe that helped somebody. If nothing else, guys, find a way to connect with your spouse in a fashion that you guys know each other so well you can have these conversations, even in front of people. I know for a fact that there were times in our marriage we couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'd be fighting, or you'd stomp somewhere in a different room, or I'd go smoke a cigarette back in the day.
Not when we were married.
Not when we were married.
No, that had to.
That was done before marriage.
That was a prerequisite. No smoking if I'm gonna marry you. There was a time when even if I'd have heard something like that in my spirit, mm-hmm. I would not have shared it with you.
Really? Because
I would have thought, I'm not telling him that. Like he can figure it out his own self.
Well, that was nice.
You said we were going to be transparent.
That's back when you didn't like me.
I'm trying.
And we've
to
been
be
married 5 years.
Transparent.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't have shared it with you because I wouldn't have. Well, let's be totally transparent.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Your ego was big enough that if I had have seen something in you that might have fed your ego, I would have kept it from you. Because the last thing I would have wanted to do was grow your ego. So I probably would have said something that was more to cut you down versus to build you up.
That's a whole episode right there, babe.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on that.
I'm trying to be positive here.
I was saying how we were at one time.
Okay, and then we can talk about how we got better.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that maybe next time.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Again, we're just getting started here and appreciate you listening, sharing with your friends. We've had a great week and we're excited to be back here with you. So thanks so much for listening. This is The Marriage Creative, and we'll catch you next time.
Today's episode is brought to you by Post & Gate. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Marriage Creative. Subscribe and click the notification icon so you can stay up to date with all things The Marriage Creative. To learn more about who we are and what we do, check us out on social media or go to themarriagecreative.com today.
I was waving at her so she could tell you bye.
Well, I was just watching you wave.
Wow.
If I wave, my chair might squeak, so I have to sit still.
Okay. Squeaky.